Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Zach Celadonia.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and we are here. It is officially draft week as we take a look at who the Pittsburgh Steelers may be interested in selecting, and a lot of things have changed, my friend. A1 Flash Zach Celadonia, how you doing? Since even myself and Brian were on Friday, we got some news and some things that have just shifted the whole stratosphere for the Steelers in this draft. What's going on, my friend?
Oh, yeah, I'm great. Besides everything we talked about on Monday being largely irrelevant now, I'm doing great. I'm so excited for the draft. I'm excited for it to be here. All the arguments to stop, all the hate to stop, all the unknown, all the questions. We're going to have an answer here pretty soon as to what the Steelers want to do. And some of us are going to have a great night. Some of us won't, but I always have a great night on draft night. It's like Christmas for me.
Yeah, you said if we end up doing something together, or like three of us or whatever, you're drinking during the draft. I mean, that sounds like drinking during the Pro Bowl, although I'd probably much more enjoy it during the draft. But, you could probably play some type of drinking game with Roger Goodell doing whatever, specifically when he was still in his back cave or whatever during COVID. Come on, man. You really gonna get that? What is your weapon of choice if you're drinking on draft night on a Thursday night of all things?
Oh yeah, dude, Thirsty Thursdays. That's number one. Number two, when the liquor's flowing, the takes are flying, dude. So yeah, no problem drinking on draft night. I get up just fine in the morning. I won't overdo it, but I'm a big bourbon guy. Whiskey, it's my favorite. Maybe I'll do some seltzers. I don't know, but yeah, draft night, got no problem getting a little lit up for that, because no matter what happens, who they draft or who they don't draft, there's going to be arguments. There's going to be takes that you're going to have to defend, takes that you're going to have to explain. And I just do that a little more loose when the juice is going.
I hear you on that. I'm a beer guy. I like my craft beer. I mean, I buy the Bud, the light waters. Oh, those aren't the waters. Those are the actual beer. But I got to have the bottles or the cans or whatever, depending on what they have the supply of. But for the most part, even when I'm tailgating, I got to have some solid. I'm a stout guy. I was grilling all weekend. I even grilled breakfast, which if you don't grill breakfast, I have a Blackstone. So highly, highly recommended. I can't say enough. Don't get any money in my pocket to say that, but geez, bacon, sausage, you name it. I even do the eggs on it, pancakes. You can get the real nice crispy edges on it. But aside from breakfast, I wasn't drinking with breakfast, although that becomes difficult tailgating. You're there at 9 a.m. and you got a beer in your hand. And you're like, man, I'm drinking. It's not even day drinking. It's morning drinking. It's drinking with breakfast, but I'll do the breakfast stout then. And
drinking on game days is a dangerous thing. I try to partake at home when I'm not at the tailgates, but I won't start till about 11, 12, because I know if I start at regular tailgate time, as if I was there, I won't make it to halftime of the game. So it's funny how, though, when you're at the game, it feels like your tolerance almost goes up and you can handle more. Maybe that's the environment of Heinz Field. But yeah, I try to partake when I'm at home during the games, but not as intensely as when I'm at the field.
Oh, I hear you on that. I have my own rule where I just I try not to drink once I'm in the stadium, or if I do, I'll have a beer. It's not like it's cost prohibitive to drink in the stadium, obviously.
Oh yeah.
And if I'm gonna do I don't do a whole lot of liquor, but as the season goes on, it gets cold. I'm a Jack Daniels guy. My liquor store, my local liquor stores, they were out of the Gentleman Jack recently, so I had to go back to the original Jack, which is just it's you'll understand as you get older, it burns the throat a little bit different, gets you throbbing. But being a bourbon guy, I think you understand how that works. So it's
Evan Williams, dude. Get
Evan Williams is
Jack
great.
Daniels, but cheap,
Yeah. I had Evan Williams at what I like to do is I'd like to try and bring some hot apple cider. And then mix that. And that all started, there was a gentleman from Moon. Hey, he may not even know it. Maybe he's a listener here. That would be pretty awesome. But if you ever come back around the Cordello Electric building, if you're still out there, bring some more apple pie moonshine. Look for the Steel City Underground flag on the tailgate tent, and I'd really, really appreciate it. Yeah, he was having a problem with his grill the one year, and he's like, we don't care. The thing's just operating. We don't. Yeah, go on over. We'll help you out. And he threw some burgers or steaks or whatever the heck he was cooking. I don't remember, but yeah, he comes back with a mason jar. He's like, you can't keep the jar, but it's like. It gave us this apple pie moonshine, and man, that was some of the best stuff I ever had in my life. I knew another guy that used to do that stuff as well. But Zach, you were supposed to coordinate with me today. It's always a good day in Steelers Nation when you get to wear a jersey for another year. And this is the guy right here, Terrell Edmonds, number 34, that just threw off everything that we were thinking about with the upcoming NFL draft on Thursday night. So now it's up to us. I was going to go over some of our picks here at SCU, but I think everyone's is thrown out the window. And the more I think about it, last year, everybody twisted my arm into Najee Harris. And I think my arm's going to get twisted even further into some picks that we're going to discuss here shortly. But before we get to that, Terrell Edmonds, I know you're a stand for him as well. And definitely this is... Brian and myself were saying this. It's like maybe they're still out there. The Steelers, they like to do this. They like to do the double dip. Grab the veteran or get the guy that's a starter capable and then maybe draft someone. So it doesn't necessarily mean that all the things we said about maybe Kyle Hamilton if he fell or Dax Hill if he's there, Lewis Seen, who was one of your favorites. Doesn't mean those guys are off the board, but I'm starting to get that feeling that maybe they're not the first round pick that we were saying, the Steelers are just blowing smoke up everyone's rear ends and they're not going to go quarterback. I might have a change of heart with that opinion, but yeah, it's good to have Edmonds back. And he's like on like a $2.5 million 1 year deal. So that doesn't necessarily scream. That even screams if they still wanted to do Honey Badger, they wanted to go out there and get him. They could add him to the defense, man. That's a real hot take. But just imagine that's still on the table. It's not like we're talking a whole lot of big bucks here, and you still got a couple of other free agents. They added they have everybody back from the secondary, so and they added Levi Wallace to it. So I'm sure you're happy to see Edmonds back in the Steel City as well.
I am. Yeah, to the surprise of some, because I did make it very known that I was all in on the Honey Badger, and you saying that it may still be a chance gets my blood going again. I had a good friend text me right after we signed Edmonds, and he was like, "Does this mean the Honey Badger is totally dead in the water?" And I said, "Yeah, dude. Unfortunately, I think it is, but not totally unfortunate because." Yeah, I have been an Edmonds supporter, an Edmonds truther, an Edmonds stan, whatever term you want to use. And ever since he was drafted, I understood the pick. It made sense why they did it. He had a rough start to his career. Started kind of hot, actually. He had an interception early when he was a rookie, but he took a little while to develop, which if you paid attention was always the plan with Edmonds. He was supposed to get better. They drafted the potential of what Edmonds could be, not necessarily the product that he was coming out of Virginia Tech. They saw what he could be, and we're finally starting to get flashes and glimpses of it. He's one of the more consistent defenders on the whole team, not just the secondary. One of the best tacklers on the team. He's a great partner for Minka now. It's a big part of the safety game is understanding each other and getting a chemistry down. Ryan Clark has talked a lot about that with Polamalu and talking about their past together and how he was able to develop this bond and just knew what Troy was doing. Even though no one ever knew what Troy was doing, Ryan Clark had the best guess probably on the field. And I do like Edmonds, absolutely. I tried to be as vocal as possible about the fact that if we weren't able to get Honey Badger or if we were in a position where we just missed out on the good guys in the draft, I would be very, very open to Edmonds coming back. In fact, he was my top choice. I totally considered Landon Collins irrelevant. I didn't really entertain any of the Ronnie Harrison talk. Elliott from the Ravens was a name that I thought could be a flyer, but he signed with the Lions. So it was always going to be Terrell Edmonds, Tyrann Mathieu, or a draft pick. They went with Edmonds. I'm happy about it. Dirt cheap, honestly. Cheaper than the fifth-year option. I heard that, the Bengals and Dolphins were making bids on him too. I don't know if it was for more or not, but the Steelers came away and got their whole secondary back, like you said, aside from Joe Hayden, but you swap him out for Levi Wallace. And uh, I'm happy. I am happy. And I think that I mentioned this in my mock draft article. I do think that the Steelers, like you just said, could still go safety early if those two names, Kyle Hamilton, because he's an elite talent, if he's there, they could take him still, the Notre Dame product. Dax Hill is another guy that I think, to give you credence or credit from your mock draft, I don't know if you're still sticking with it or not, but I do think that Dax Hill is a possibility as well because he has such great coverage ability and a unique skill set where even though you've got Terrell Edmonds and Minka Fitzpatrick as your clear starting safeties, Dax Hill could be put at nickel. You could put him at a dime back, or you could move him all around the defense to all the defensive back spots. I mean, probably not outside corner, but he is versatile. So he would have a role this year, as would Hamilton, of course, with the talent that he has. So I think those two would still be, they have asterisks next to their names, with the Terrell Edmonds signing. But my guy, Lewis Seen from Georgia, I don't know if he's on the table as much anymore. Anything can happen if a guy slides far enough, like in the second or third round. But I liked Seen so much because I thought that he fit the Steelers' defense so well, subbing in for the Terrell Edmonds role. Well, now with Edmonds back, we don't need a sub for the Terrell Edmonds role. It's Terrell Edmonds himself. So Seen from Georgia, Brisker for Penn State, and the Maryland safety Cross. I'm not really sure if seeing them being drafted to Pittsburgh is realistic at this point. Again, if a guy falls far enough, you can't ignore your board and the talent. But if they're going to look at any safety, I would lean more towards the possibility of Hamilton or Dax Hill. Otherwise, I think safety might not be a position you see drafted by the Steelers.
Or at least in the first round. I mean,
Yeah.
and maybe even the second round as we continue to talk through this. And you make some good points. Like Edmonds, again, this is like a contract. This is the reason they didn't fifth year option him. It's just, it was probably going to be about 8 million ish, maybe 9 million ish. It wasn't quite 10. I don't think it was into that creeping into that neighborhood. But that's the whole entire reason why they didn't do the fifth year option. And they kind of felt what the market was going to be for Edmonds, and then they were able to bring him back. And it's like you said, you said something about the Bengals always going for the leftovers or the sloppy seconds from the Steelers, and that's absolutely true. By the way, found my Steelers pen. That's going to throw off the whole camera focus. I'm going to put that down. But I love the click pens, man. I could do it here. You could hear it a little bit maybe in the background.
Dude, the Bengals. Listen, I was being funny about that, but I called that low key because here's the thing. Thank you, Terrell Edmonds. When he took the Steelers out of his bio on Twitter and stuff, and it was being pretty much like 99% assumed and confirmed that Edmonds was out of here. He tweeted the one morning, it was just the devil emoji, the purple devil emoji. I'm sure we're all familiar with that with smartphones. And he tweeted that, which is usually like a sinister vibe, like, ooh, sneaky, what am I up to? And Mike Hilton liked it. Mike Hilton, of all people, liked it. The guy who left last year for the Bengals. So I saw that right away, and I was like, dude, if I have any kind of theory right now, I think the Bengals might be trying to steal Edmonds away because it came out like an hour before that they were interested in the Honey Badger. So despite the fact that they have Jesse Bates and Von Bell, they were looking to add, or still looking to add, maybe that's a team that might draft the safety, the Bengals, because they almost stole Edmonds away, and they failed though. And typical the Bengals. How often do they beat the Steelers pre-Joe Burrow?
Not that often. Well, I can't say that. I've been down to Cincinnati for the last 2 games at the boring concrete block that is Paul Brown Stadium, and that was against Ryan Finley, and who was the other backup that was in there? Was that
Brandon Allen?
Brandon Allen, and those were that wasn't a pretty game. Neither of those were pretty game. Now I should say the last 3. I was down there with Ryan Lippert, who drives up from the other direction. So we meet in the middle, have a few beers, and he's wearing like a Benny Snell jersey because he's a big Kentucky guy. And Benny Snell actually plays in the last few of these games. Now the Steelers, Ben did play in this last game, but James Pierre did as well, and it wasn't very pretty. It was really bad to be at that game, and it's one of the few games in recent memory I remember. I've been going to a lot of road games over the years. It got kind of ridiculous to go up to Cleveland. I actually haven't been to Baltimore. I would need to get there, but real easy trips to get to Cleveland and Cincinnati. And Cincinnati just, the previous season, they were allowed to have people there where Pittsburgh was having problems. I did make it to that game where the Steelers, it was the game Devin Bush got hurt in. And it was like one of 2 or 3 games with the COVID season that they actually had fans at Heinz Field. But the ones in Cincinnati, they were allowed to have like 15,000. It was almost all Steelers fans, and the few Bengals faithful that still came out, even with that ravaged team. Joe Burrow had gotten hurt earlier in the year. There weren't that many there, and then they had the surprise of their life with how badly that was the game where it was like, let's try and have Ben run around and bootleg and do all these other crazy things, and it was just they changed for the sake of change. It just didn't click. So. Yeah. But you hit the nail on the head, absolutely. With I think they're looking the same way I was just thinking, like if the Steelers could still add someone, because Edmonds has been playing up a lot, slot, mainly tight ends. And he did really well with that last year. His position does not attract vanity statistics. And that's where people are going to look and say, oh, well, he doesn't have the interceptions or he doesn't have the sacks. But they let him loose a couple times last year. And you can remember the couple highlights that when they call his name, tackles for loss on like a big 3rd or 4th down. He had a couple picks. One of them was a tip drill. That was actually Joe Burrow and the Bengals in that game. Yeah, with Minka. And those two working together in sync, I like, but it still doesn't mean they can't add somebody. And they've been using, they were looking the year before with Malik Hooker. And another point of this too, that I've brought up before on these other programs that we've done, Morgan Burnett was signed the year that they took Terrell Edmunds, and everybody knew that they needed to take a safety. Everybody wanted a safety that year, but the safety wasn't supposed to start right away. So this could be another thing. And I hate the word bridge. I hate the word stopgap, but this is what it might be. Where if Edmonds, maybe he doesn't ball out, or he does, and then his market inflates and he ends up signing somewhere else, just like Juju did this past offseason, could be a very similar situation. But they draft the guy that's lying in wait potentially this year, and it'd be great if they could find one of these guys in the 2nd round. Do we necessarily think it's going to be there? I don't think it's going to be the 1st round pick anymore. So Scene's probably not there. Hamilton's definitely not going to be there. Although stranger things have happened. Miles Jack, DK Metcalf. Yeah. We've talked about this. It's floating around Twitter. It's floating around our back rooms about players who have 1st round grades, and then they end up creeping into the 2nd round. And it happens a lot more frequently because of how me and Bryant ended the last show. There aren't 100 players with a 1st round grade, but I digress. Now that I'm not so heavy on safety, and Dax Hill, by the way, you're absolutely right. He could be playing like a Mike Hilton type role. I think Cam Sutton's still like the nickel corner type, perhaps. I don't know that Cam Sutton is a guy that comes off the bench. Maybe he's still playing boundary corner, and then they rotate in either Ahkello Witherspoon or Levi Wallace, depending on who doesn't win the main job. But they play a lot of nickel or sub package. The 3-4 has only been about a 30% thing for the longest time. This is the reason why I kind of soured on Jordan Davis initially. Like, I fell in love with him running in shorts and just like, wow, look at this freak athlete. And we talked about, does Devontae Wyatt have this kind of Laramie Tunsil drop to him, Lyle Collins type drop to him? That's something that could also happen. So we don't know. But we like having some of the horses up front too. But for the most part, the secondary is already locked out. It's like if somebody falls to them, we've seen Cross in the 3rd round in some of the mocks. That could happen. And you've mentioned all the links, Maryland, Mike Tomlin, Matt Canada, all these different things that parlay into this and where they get their information and source it and things of that nature. So that leads me to the topic at hand. That's right down there. Is it obvious the Steelers pick a quarterback at Thursday's NFL draft? I have come around to, and this is a little different than the previous years. When we started doing this in the offseason, offensive line, no matter what. And I said, we still got to wait for free agency, but Linderbaum, a center, a tackle, and they signed Mitchell Trubisky, and they get some offensive linemen, but Mitchell Trubisky didn't back anyone away. And I know there's the whole crowd that's like, they absolutely hate Mason Rudolph. They're not even giving him the time of day. I'm not in that crowd with either of these guys. I said I had the hardest time finding a fault with Mitchell Trubisky. I really wanted to just go with Rudolph and Haskins, but geez, we're talking more or less. I always look at this from the business end. I look at contracts and what's it going to cost to acquire this player? And I wasn't into trading for a Jimmy Garoppolo and blowing draft picks. Mitchell Trubisky came in and is making like not even a full $1 million. He has incentives in his package. He could make more, but at the base of this salary, let's say he gets hurt in camp and doesn't play, he's not making any more than what Mason Rudolph is. Now, unfortunately, Dwayne Haskins, rest in peace, he's not going to be a part of this camp battle anymore. So maybe this kind of sways the Steelers more in the direction of a quarterback. And Lord knows they've visited with all of them. They have done their homework on all of them. And we were having this little bit of back and forth, you and I, on Twitter. And there's a couple of camps, a little bit of theory here. It's the next year's class is going to be better. That's the one thing. And we've said it ourselves. And it's why? Why? Because I'm an Ohio State homer. But CJ Stroud, if he continues to be the stud that he is heading into, yet another year of college football, well, everybody had Desmond Ritter atop their boards a year ago. You don't know which dark horse candidate is going to fly up the boards with another season of college football. It's possible it just adds and makes it a bigger class. We've seen quarterbacks bust no matter what. Heisman Trophy winners, top 10 picks. That's where I was kind of coming from with this, Zach. But let's start with, I know you've got some fire in your eyes there, with the next year, the class is going to be better kind of line of thought, and don't draft a quarterback right now because you'll get somebody next time.
Yeah, fire or lightning, right? I appreciate you bringing it up because I know not everybody that listens to the show just follows us blindly on Twitter. But I'm of the camp that, to answer the question on the ticker at the bottom of the screen, yes, I think it is obvious that the Steelers are targeting quarterback heavily. Do I know if they're going to come away with their guy? That's too hard to predict, but I think that is their number one target in mind, is to acquire a quarterback, mainly Malik Willis. And I also have gone back and forth on this myself. Just last show, I said on record that I didn't think Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett would make it to 20. And so for that fact, I took them out of my top 5 entirely. I've already kind of gone back and forth with that and felt like I not misspoke, but I informed the people of bad information, if that makes sense. I feel like it was just assuming because of all the, quarterbacks get elevated every year and they go higher than you're expecting every year. There's still a good amount of these experts and connected NFL sources that think Malik isn't going to go top 10. He could go top 15. But there's this belief that the Steelers won't have to trade up the farm to get him. So I am I have jumped back on, I really do think he's the top target. I think they'll do whatever it is that it's going to take to acquire him within their means. I don't think they're going to trade away next year's first round pick. I don't think they'll trade away more than, I'm really set on the idea of them trading either their second or third this year, and then the same thing next year to move up. So a second this year and a third next year, or a third this year and a second next year. That's what I think it would cost to move up just far enough to grab Malik Willis, if that happens. Now, to get back to what you really asked me about the waiting for next year's class, I get that. I really do, because I am not sitting here and arguing about the talent of Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. The two of them are locks right now to be the top quarterbacks of next year's class. Their ceilings are high. Their talent is good already. They both have strong arms. They're both mobile. They both go to huge schools. They face the best competition. I get it with those two. Absolutely. It's beyond those two that I've been getting into these disagreements with people that think that next year's class is quote unquote loaded behind these two guys. And whoever I challenge on that, or even ask to explain themselves in a calm manner, I'm like, who else are we talking about here besides these top two? And it's all, well, there's probably going to be risers, or there's going to be someone, or, well, did you know about Carson Wentz that year? Like, yeah, I agree with all of that. It is all speculatory, and there's a chance that there will be probably 3 to 4, maybe even 5 first-round guys next year in the eyes of the public, in the eyes of the draft community. My thing is that happens like every year. I really think, like, looking ahead to next year's quarterback class, for the longest time, most people can't pick out like 2-3 guys max that are supposed to be first round the next year. And then stuff changes. I'm not too old, and I'm not too old to remember a time when people did a way too early mock and they put Brad Kaya in the top 10 because he was supposed to be a
Ooh.
first round pick.
A
You know
favorite,
what
a
I'm saying?
favorite of our mocks of Christmas past. That is a true blast from the past. Oh my!
Yeah, man. Yeah, and a class that does stick out to me as one that was talked about as deep, not just two guys, not just three guys, but the class of Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Josh Rosen, and Sam Darnold. Well, four of those guys were already supposed to be first round guys, especially Sam Darnold. He was viewed as a sensation. Rosen, same deal, basically. Not a good mover, but he was viewed as like this next big thing. Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson. Josh Allen might have not had the hype going into that season that he ended up with, but that class in particular, like all of those dudes have pretty much busted out except for Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Baker Mayfield, I know he's got injury issues, but that is my point. My long-winded point here is that you can have your preference, and that's fine. That's the whole point of this. Everybody's going to have their opinions, and everybody's going to argue till they're blue in the face until you can get the opposite person to agree with you, which usually doesn't even happen. But every year, there's these guesses and these assumptions that the next year's class, whether it's quarterback, running back, receiver, whatever, it's going to be better because this guy and that guy, and then the potential of the rest coming in. I think that Malik is worth the pick this year because you don't know if we're going to be in a position to draft CJ Stroud or Bryce Young. All things go according to plan and they're as good as they are. How are we going to be in a position to draft them? And then after that, you get back into, oh, well, then we'll be able to pick this guy that nobody knows is coming yet and the hype is going to be really good. Oh, so you mean Malik Willis? Would you be okay taking Malik Willis if he was there next year after these two? So
It's like taking
really,
Cardell
I just
Jones after playing 3 games, three good games in the playoffs with the Buckeyes. But yeah, it's very similar. It's the unknown, the great unknown.
Yeah, so I get it. Like, I don't want to piss anyone off. Like, if that's your vibe and you want to wait till next year, that's fine, dude. Like, I've also tried to be very transparent and honest about this. That I want Malik Willis more than any other product. He's my top on my board for the Steelers, and I think that's the way the Steelers are going to go. If they don't, I'm not crying myself to sleep, dude. I'm going to be happy about whoever they draft as long as it's a player who can come in and contribute early. So no sweat off my back, dude, if they don't get quarterback this year. I just think that's the way they're going. Does it help that that's who I want them to get? Probably. Yeah. I mean, that's human of me, but I'm totally fine if they don't get Malik this year. I just think it is obvious that that's who they want and that's who they're going after.
Yeah, I'm with you a little bit to chew off on what you said, and
Sorry.
no, it's cool. It's just going back to the whole draft and trading type thing, and I had the old table up here. Yeah, I'm gonna try and pull it up just so some people could see all of the values, and this is like the old Jimmy Johnson chart, supposedly the point scoring on each of the draft picks through each round. And so the first round, first overall is 3,000. And there's some interesting stuff going on too that I need to add to this. Just this morning alone, you've got a couple of different Adam Schefter, for example, a couple different reporters or insiders saying stuff. Adam Schefter says within the past week, as the draft has drawn closer, multiple teams in the top half of the draft have inquired with others to trade back in the first round per sources. So far, the interest in moving back in Thursday's draft has greatly exceeded the interest in moving up. So that's one thing that has transpired here. Tom Pelissero, for all the discussion about what this quarterback class lacks, don't be surprised if we see a bit of a run late in round one on Thursday night with one or more trades back in to snag a quarterback. We were discussing this. I think myself and Brian were discussing this. If you get a quarterback, if you can get back into the first round, that cheaper contract that you could fifth-year option, unless the guy starts getting, what do you want to say, antsy, like Kyler Murray. What's with these guys? They just like delete everything off their social media. Don't you dare take the SEU stuff off. I'll know something's up. It's like the fad. It's like the fad. It's like, come on. Like Deebo Samuel just did that, and it's like, come on. So looks like there's we were talking about this, and some of the stuff that myself and Brian were bringing up with some of the mocks and the teams in position. What you had said about that specific season with the 5 quarterbacks going in that first round, everybody needed a quarterback. And all these teams that have multiple picks right now have already gone through that, and they're still kind of perpetually bad. And that's where I had that inkling with you too about whether or not, well, I'll get to that when it comes to next year and next year's class. But just coming back to the draft trade chart here and pulling this up, the Steelers are at 20, which is 850. Okay, that's the value assigned to it. And if they want to get ahead of the Saints are at 16, right? I know they have 2 in here now, and that might be very
16
well.
Is the highest one, yeah.
That might be very well because they have some notion. Either they're going to package something to maybe move up and make a play to go higher if they want a quarterback, or they're just trying to get ahead of Pittsburgh, and they have like 2 different things going here. But just to say, to even get to like 15, you've got to add another 300 points to that. And as you get into the 50s, we're talking about second round pick 52, 380 would do it. So you might not have to get too rich here. It just depends on how ornery the other team is be on, well, we want this, this, and that, and make it too rich of a move. We saw the Devin Bush move wasn't necessarily a gigantic lion's share of picks or anything like that. It's not like
that's exactly my point, dude. That's exactly what I've been saying about the trading up. Like 10 spots is maximum, but even to do that, we just saw it like 2 years ago or 3, whatever. And I think it would still work because Colbert's also not an idiot. Let's not act like Kevin Colbert's new at this, man. Like not you, I mean like the public. If he's going to trade up to get Malik Willis, it's going to be 1 mid-round pick this year and 1 mid-round pick next year. A high mid-round pick, but I'm doubling down on that. I don't think he mortgages our first-round pick next year and sets the next guy up for failure. I think he trades a 3rd or 2nd this year and a 3rd or 2nd next year. And you have the flexibility to do that because I know you like this. We talked about this already in the back rooms. But signing Edmonds this year gives you that flexibility that if you have to trade your 2nd or 3rd-round pick this year and miss out on one of the safeties who's supposed to go in that range, well, now you can because we have Edmonds. So the 2nd and 3rd round pick this year, both of them, either of them, it's a very common spot for the Steelers to target a safety. And now it's not as big of a necessity, and it wouldn't be as big of a, I can't believe they traded that pick when they could have got a starter role filled. Well, now it's filled.
Well, not only that, when you have these teams, usually you've seen in the past where 49ers, Eagles, Rams, they give up the house to move up into like the top 5, top 3. And now we're hearing that these teams, it's such an unpredictable draft this year. I was talking about this in the back rooms too. It was just like, who's going number 1? Who's going number 5? I mean, Evan Neal is out here falling out of the top 10 in some of these mocks. I think I said the other day, I was surprised. I'm like, I almost forgot he's in the draft. Like there are players that people aren't even talking about. And again, it's everybody's looking for the Drew Brees replacement, the Ben Roethlisberger replacement. So those are always going to be the sexy topics, but it's not going to cost you a whole lot to move into, let's say that the 10 spot here is 1,300. From 850 to 1,300, you're talking not even 500 points. You might give up a little bit more than 500 points there just to secure that. If you absolutely feel you got to jump in front of someone. So the real wild cards are like the Carolina Panthers, who we have to toss them. We have to toss Ian Rappaport's tweet into here too. The Panthers are not expected to trade for, let me see, I got it here. Panthers not expected to trade for Baker Mayfield prior to the first round of the NFL draft, sources say. If they do it at all, Thursday has to play out first before any other options are considered. Carolina picks at number 6. So there's a lot at play, and there's a lot of chicken. There's a lot of stuff like that. If the Panthers pass on quarterback, I could almost bet for sure the Steelers are going to land either Pickett, who Brian hates, Malik Willis, I'd be excited with. Yes, I've turned it on ahead, and here's why. We talk about next year, okay? The heart, dude. Got the visor game too, right? You got to have.
Malik doesn't wear a visor.
Malik doesn't have the visor game
because visor quarterbacks don't do well, like in the playoffs. Apparently, that's a thing I've been turned on to. So, like, we don't want him to wear a visor. It's good that he doesn't. He's very cool, but he doesn't wear a visor.
Oh, okay. I made that mistake. I knew you would know that information, and you're all about
Ritter wears a visor.
Yes.
So does Sam Howell.
Okay. Well, I haven't paid attention to Sam Howell. He's off my radar entirely. But yes, maybe I was getting him crossed up here with Desmond Ritter, who I don't know. I'm not as excited at taking him at 20. Like Pickett or Willis, I could definitely get on board with. I was 100% Najee Harris after being completely not running back. This whole time I wasn't necessarily not quarterback. I was preferring that they don't trade anything away. And now as you get closer to draft day and you see, well, if they really did need to up, they might not even have to. They could just sit there and it might just come right to them like Najee did last year. You've got teams that are just sitting on their hands with that are doing that aren't going to take a quarterback. They've already taken a quarterback in past drafts and they're sticking with their guy and they're going to try and make sure that they develop that player. So as I look at this, I had the other tweet that I had sent you, by the way, and you were like, I don't understand. Does this mean you're agreeing with me? Because I said a great prospect in the draft doesn't mean you'll win more than 5 games in a season ever. And this all comes from the folks that are like, you play to win Super Bowls. Steelers have a lot of money invested in their defense. Yeah, they do. It's because TJ Watt is like the highest paid or one of the highest paid players in the NFL right now on the defensive side of the football. And a whole lion's share of that hit is this season. Okay. There are definitely teams that are taking bigger hits even in the future or at that 100 million mark or whatever. The Steelers always spent like half and half offense and defense. So I'm not as concerned on that. But I said, if they pass on a quarterback this year and they aren't in position to draft one next year, it probably means that quarterback isn't a problem. It probably means Mitchell Trubisky or Mason Rudolph got the job done. Who knows? Maybe they add somebody else. Maybe they do draft someone. We do have a goofy draft I do want to bring up. However, I will say this much. It does afford them the opportunity with these two guys to maybe take a flyer on somebody like Malik Willis. Now that they have Terrell Edmonds in place, I have starters all across the board. I don't see a whole lot of huge needs. Yeah, they could add a stud wide receiver. How many times are you going to go to the well on quarterback? That's kind of the thing that I'm at. Now, if you're at 20 and Malik Willis falls to you at 20, by all means, I'm on board. Pull the trigger. If you only got to give up like another pick somewhere, like let's say it was a 3rd rounder, like you were saying, or 3rd and a 7 or something like that, to move up 4 spots to get Malik Willis, I'm on board with that as well. Even Kenny Pickett, I'll say that much, because Kenny Pickett, he's got the goods. We're all worried about his digits and if he can hold a football. I understand that as well. You're going to worry as to whether or not Malik Willis, is he just a one-trick pony? I don't think so. He's got a cannon of an arm. He's a big play guy. You see the ceiling there. You see the things that made Ben who he was in the past. And you've even sent out some videos and done some stuff yourself where it's like, hey, look, he could stand in the pocket tall and do things. But if that pressure's coming and the offensive line still is patchwork, then he's able to elude and get out of the way. And if it doesn't cost you that much to do it, great. The thing is, you've got the teams. I said a great prospect in the draft doesn't mean you'll win more than 5 games in a season ever. So if you just draft a guy, I said, see also New York Jets. So we could maybe see also New York Jets. I've got the Jetties up here, Jets, Jets. And I was doing this find. And it's kind of funny because as I scroll down the page, so you had Zach Wilson 2nd overall. James Morgan, they took the year before from Florida International. Sam Darnold, just a few years ago, 2018, that same class you were talking about.
Tony Hackenberg, baby.
Oh, my goodness. Christian Hackenberg, 51.
There you go.
He's going. Zach, Christian Hackenberg, off the board before the Steelers draft.
Thank God.
52. So, Bryce Petty, Taj Boyd. I mean, you're probably not looking for Taj Boyd to start. Maybe not even Bryce Petty. You're throwing like a flyer on some of these guys. Yeah. Greg McElroy. But Mark Sanchez, 2009. I mean, they haven't had like a Kellen Clemens, Brad Smith. They took 2 in 2006. I mean, we're going all the way back to when Ben was drafted. Brooks Bollinger in 2003. I mean, you're really driving back. This is like that old quote about doing things over and over, the definition of insanity.
Yeah,
it really is. And that's the only thing where I worry with the Steelers is like, are you going to keep throwing darts? At least the good thing is here, we know with Pittsburgh, they've got not the quarterback, but they've got a head coach in place. And they're not going to have to rely on throwing Malik Willis out there week 1. Although every Yinzer is going to want him out there. Maybe he wins it in camp. Maybe he pulls the old Russell Wilson or something. He just looks so good and passes the eye test. They're going to do it. I have a feeling the Steelers wouldn't do that, period. Patrick Mahomes probably passed that same eye test in Kansas City. Andy Reid said, no way in hell am I putting him on the field as a rookie. We're not going to ruin him. Let's let him stay in the system. We have Alex Smith here. We can still win some games. And then it pays off big time in the end with what? How many AFC championships in a row they've been to? Like 3. And they were in a couple Super Bowls. They win one. So that's their short window. Now they got to pay the guy. And that's usually when it starts, the wheels start to fall off. But thankfully, the Miami Dolphins helped them out and gave them a bunch of draft picks and potential cheap contracts. But I digress. First rounder. I could see Kevin Colbert even sneaking back into the first round. We'll take a look at that for a second. Let me find where. Oh, no, I'm back to their dumb mock draft thing. But that's always fun. We may not get to look at all of those, but just take a look at it's 590. You get to pick 32, 600. You're into 600, 660 from 28 down, right? And maybe you still have like a Malik Willis or somebody like that. Maybe not Malik. Maybe he is still there. You don't know, like a Lamar Jackson. Maybe Desmond Ritter's there. And I'm totally cool with if the Steelers even trade back and end up in a position where they're picking a little bit later and they grab an extra pick. It sounds like everybody wants to try and fall back, but it's not necessarily going to happen. 380 is pick 52. That's about half the value of getting back into like a pick 28, maybe a little bit more than that. So if you package something together, there's a very good chance that the Steelers could sneak in. Maybe they end up grabbing one of these other names we've been talking about. Let's say they surprise everyone and go and grab Chris Olave and then swing back into the first round. Then they're not going to have a second round pick. That's probably what it's going to take because the team's not going to want to give up like 32, for example, and then have to wait 30-some picks, 40, 50 picks later in some cases to draft. But if they fall back a little bit into 52 and they already have their own second-round pick, yeah, they might wait 10 spots, still get the guy that they were looking at in the first round, fall back, and the Steelers sneak back in, and they end up getting a steal. Those are some scenarios. I love saying both. Like, ask one of your voice assistants, syrup. I got the wife on that the one time. She would always say it the one way, I'd say it the other. And now I don't remember which was which, but we ended up asking the Echo device, and it says the syrup is pronounced syrup, and it had an syrup. It's the greatest thing ever. It like proved us both right, which is never a good thing if you're in a marriage or with a significant other, as I'm sure you don't want the woman there. But anyways, that's where I see as far as the trade value. Did I miss anything that you said? I know you had a long-winded thing, so I had a long-winded thing in order to catch up on a couple of those. But we're thinking quarterback could be the target, unless they're off the board. I think it's got to be Pickett. I think it's got to be Willis, or it's a move back in, the jump ahead. They got to get, I think, a little bit higher than 52 if they want to try and hit on Desmond Ritter out of Cincinnati. Then the rest of them, I'm not really too fascinated with moving anywhere to go after Sam Howell, Matt Corral, Carson Strong, any of those guys.
Yeah, dude. If my buddies could hear you talking up Kenny Pickett, they go nuts because that's the biggest. I've gotten almost everybody close to me on the Malik train, but a lot of my good friends are Pitt fans. Naturally, I live in Pittsburgh, so they're like, "What about Kenny Pickett, man? You don't like Kenny Pickett? I really like Kenny Pickett." So I not just because of them, but I genuinely do think Pickett still has NFL ability, and I feel like I'm just lying if I said I didn't think that from the jump. You know, he didn't have the hype that we've seen Malik Willis receive, or even Desmond Ritter to an extent, Matt Corral, whatever. But it shouldn't be Pickett's fault that happened. You know, he shouldn't be a victim because he's so consistent and like nothing really went up or down with his stock. You know, I think Pickett is still a fine prospect. I see a lot of Joe Burrow in his game. So I also would be on board with Pickett. Ritter too. Ritter's a bit more of a project, but I like I said, I wouldn't be upset about him being the guy as long as there's a plan in place for him and they can possibly let him sit maybe for the whole year behind Mitch. It's peaceful, dude. It's rather peaceful because, I mean, Brian's the hardest to get on my side, but we're all pretty much,
everyone.
you, me, Zach. I love Bryant, dude. I'd love to see him on the show sometime soon. But like I said, I think he keeps ducking me because he's afraid of the facts, dude. He's afraid to face the flash and the facts.
It's tough. You're the Monday guy, and he's like the Friday guy, just because of the way the scheduling ends up falling in there. But you need to tell the folks, you need to tell the people that you have your mock draft is up on SteelCityUnderground.com, and you ran this how many times? Here's one of the first that were run, And I think that you said 3 out of 8 times, and this was the Draft Network, and you were trying to get into a position, and it was just the same thing that we demonstrated the other day, to be quite frank, that perhaps Malik Willis is there in some of these. And then half the time, you know what? We're absolutely wrong on this. These simulators are all out of whack. You got Pro Football Focus that has some of these guys in the 40s, which is kind of crazy. There's your second run on that, by the way, with Malik Willis once again. And then we can talk some second round picks as well. And we could also look at maybe some of the mocks, because you know what? We actually got some time, brother. We haven't exhausted. We can even talk about some McDonald's if we want to again.
Oh, dude, I deleted DoorDash off my phone. I need to look in the mirror and make some adjustments. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Thanks for the plug.
Is your
Shameless
Edmonds
plug.
jersey still fit? Is that the reason why you didn't have it on? Uh-oh.
No, I'm not leaving the show. People are stuck with me. But yeah, dude, no, it still fits. It's a little more snug. I appreciate the plug though about the mock. Yeah, the mock is always my favorite thing to write every year. I don't do a whole lot of writing these days at all. It's tough for me to stay that focused. But the mock draft is always super fun. And yeah, I ran the simulator. I wanted to go into this with the purpose of trying to get Malik Willis at 20, just to see how often it happened. And once I hit 3 times, I was going to stop. I wasn't going to spend all day trying to do it. So the very first one I ran hit it. I was pleasantly surprised. The very first time I ran through, Malik Willis was just there at 20, took him, didn't have to sacrifice any picks, and I proceeded as such. It took me 8 more tries to get 2 more out of that. And among the 3 mock drafts that I was able to get Malik Willis at 20, the one that I liked the most and decided to write up had Malik Willis at 20, Christian Watson at 52, who is a height, weight, speed sensation out of North Dakota State University. And then the third round pick, I went with cornerback Kobe Bryant from Cincinnati, because this would be ideal, in my opinion, if we could pull off not having to trade up for Malik Willis. This would be perfect. You still get a receiver with big playability who at the worst would come in and immediately be the 3 or 4, probably eventually work his way into a more featured role. And then Kobe Bryant, I love that pick because I really believe that, Kobe Bryant at Cincinnati, he was opposite Sauce Gardner, who is believed. You want to talk about forgetting prospects for even in the draft. I haven't thought about Sauce Gardner since like January, because I know he's going to go like top 5, top 6. And he was on the other side of Kobe Bryant. But Bryant has great size and speed himself, 6'1" and some change. He's good in man, good in zone. He won the Jim Thorpe Award this year, which for people who don't know, that's the best defensive back in the country. Which it wasn't a fluke this year. I know that some Steeler fans will remember a name, Gerard Holloman from Louisville a couple years back. He won the Thorpe Award as well.
Why don't you bring up Shakur Brown while we're at it?
yeah, dude. Yeah, Shakur Brown. But Holloman won the Thorpe Award because he got like 14 interceptions at Louisville, but they were all thrown like right to him. It was crazy. He was just a magnet for the ball, but not because he was doing anything special. But Kobe Bryant is deserving of the Thorpe Award. I think he's a good corner. I think he's a second-round talent that I was fortunate to get in the third. So that would be an ideal scenario for me. You get Malik in the first, and you still get 2 players the next 2 picks who likely will contribute as rookies, and by next year probably be, maybe even starters. Keep in mind, Cam Sutton's only got 1 year left on his deal. So I understand the people's want to get a cornerback. So I get it. So I tried to target that somewhat in the early rounds. But keep in mind, this is all gravy. Like, I would love to be able to keep our first 3 picks. But if the Steelers, like we just mentioned for a long time there, if they have to trade their second or third round pick, that would be something I could stomach a little easier. If they were able to, like, let's say hypothetically they give away their third. Well, if they still get Malik Willis and Christian Watson, I'd be psyched. If they have to trade away their second and they still get Malik and then Kobe Bryant and then the fourth, I mean, there's scenarios where it isn't going to be like the end of the world if they trade a mid-round pick this year. I know some people view it as such, and some people, like, it's like they hoard the Steelers draft picks. Like, oh, well, what if I need that? What if I need it? And I don't think it's like life or death. If they trade away a second or third this year, the class can still be very, very productive and helpful in this season, not just wait till next year.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. I'm going to go backwards on my own mock draft that I had here because
There you go.
originally, yeah, Dax Hill, but that's because when I ran these same simulations, I ended up with Desmond Ritter in the second, and he was there, and it was just like, okay, I can't.
Yeah, I would do that. I would do that.
And it, and then the third one here, this is an interesting guy. And I have no idea where these players are going to end up. You got a lot of players that are coming off of like certain injuries. Um, all over. We talk about Stingley, who's the one wide receiver. Now I'm drawing a blank, but he could go top 10.
Oh, Jameson
Possibly.
Williams.
Yes, Jameson Williams. It's just wild to me how many of these dudes may or may not be available. And Sky Moore is one that ends up like floating all over the board. And I'm like, well, in my world of doing this simulation, if he ends up being there, I'm like, okay, I pass on him. And now he's available in the third round. Well, hell yeah. Why aren't you going to do that? And if they end up with Willis, I saw one of these tweets out there and somebody put him in there and it keeps coming back to me. It's like haunting me like years ago where somebody that you talk about and you forget about him. Then you talk about him. Then you forget about him. George Pickens ends up being there like in the second round, or Sky Moore ends up being there in the second round. If you end up bumping Sky a little bit higher, if they got people that are taking him as high at the end of the first round, it's pretty wild, which means he could go high in the second round. So the Steelers land, like, if they do that with a 1-2 punch, it's going to be a lot better than some of the things that I've been eye spying here over on the web. And we'll take a look at a few of these picks, but that's exactly where my thought process is headed. Do they go so heavy on offense? We're not even talking. It's crazy. We're not talking tackles or centers or anything. They could still do that in like the third round. Their centers are usually, maybe 1, 2, 3 in the top 100. So that's always entirely plausible. But we take a look at some of the mock drafts that are out there. This one is the one that's going to get you probably the most here, Zach. And as we kind of scroll down and we're trying to find the Steelers at pick 20. Okay, we've got.
I saw us.
You saw this one? Ryan Wilson, Chris Trapasso, Josh Edwards. These were all like done on Sunday, just a day ago. Jordan Davis. Then I went over here and I'm like, wait a minute. The Falcons are drafting, and it's just kind of like it's driving me crazy. You got the Steelers completely traded out here too, as well with the Texans. They moved up for Willis, but the Steelers, they're nowhere to be found on this board. And let me see, Chris Trapasso. I'm going to open his up and bring it back. So let's see where else we're at in the 20s. Matt Corral, Malik Willis. It's all over the board. It's absolutely crazy. And this was the draft that I was looking for. The Pittsburgh Steelers, and I'm like, well, where are they at on this page? What exactly do we think what kind of trade did the Steelers just make with the Atlanta Falcons? And we have them here picking up, let's see, they get number 43 and number 58 and then a 2023 third rounder. So as we fly back down the page, they end up with Christian Harris, a linebacker from Alabama, Bernard Ryman, offensive tackle, Central Michigan, and then 58 from the Falcons, Carson Strong from Nevada. And I'm just kind of like, are we really throwing a dart at a quarterback just for the sake of taking a quarterback there? Why are we throwing a dart? Like tackle? Like okay. You take the tackle in the second round. That's like, is that their top pick there? No, it wasn't. It was It was the linebacker out of Alabama. That player's never going to play. They shouldn't see the field.
Year, yeah.
Not this year.
Not a lot.
So why not just take Malik Willis if you're going to have a linebacker that's going to sit there and not see any PT? That one doesn't make any sense.
Tackle might not play right away either behind Chooks and Dan Moore because they're the incumbent starters.
Yeah, precisely. And Miles Jack, Devin Bush, edge rushers. I'm like, and nobody's playing it over Highsmith or TJ Watt here. Like that's just absolutely driving me bonkers. Like looking at some of these, like I could get on board with a few, but Matt Corral, like. I hope they're not trading up for Matt Corral. It looked like he just kind of landed in their lap here on the one CBS mock draft. And I'm going to try and pull up a couple more here. Pro Football Focus, who was this that had Malik Willis at 20, no moves. You even said in your mock, and it's the reason why I don't do it either, is it's like you can't predict draft picks. So I try not to do these things. Some of them just try and...
For trades, you mean? Can't predict trades, really.
Yeah. Did I say that? Oh, I said that backwards. The trades. And then making the draft picks and making all kind of crazy trades, and that just makes things. It's fun for and some of this is entertainment purposes. Let's not kid ourselves. The NFL is doing this in Las Vegas this year.
Yeah.
and and there's like 2 minutes between each pick, and they're gonna get the networks that are doing this, all the TV royalties, all the ad revenue. This is an entertainment product still. So Anthony Treesh over, I'm not looking anymore at PFF because these guys just drive me absolutely crazy. The Draft Network, let's see, James Eisner. I never even looked to see where this one was yet. So let's fly down the page. Let's see if the Steelers are still here at 20. They are. Desmond Ritter.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm okay with that. That's not like the end of the world necessarily. If you're looking at this over under on Ritter, 28.5 implied odds to go round 1, 55%. I kind of like that they have that in there. Now I'm kind of interested in seeing, we come back around to this and seeing who went just ahead of it. Chris Olave to the Saints, Trent McDuffie,
Right.
Penning, Malik Willis to the Saints. So exactly
Yeah.
what we were saying with the 16th overall pick. That's very, very much so likely. Kyle Krabs, I'm going to pull him up here in a second as well and see. Oh, he did a full 3-rounder. So that'll be kind of interesting.
I saw someone this morning that was going along with what I said. I know you said no more PFF, but it was a PFF dude who had us bumping up to 11, and he had us trading our second this year and our third next year, aka what I've been like saying is probably what it will cost to move up that much. So that guy had us picking Malik at 11th, and then we still had our third this year and the rest of the draft too. But we traded away our second to do that in his mock. So that's something I could see happening. And dude, I'll triple, quadruple down on this. I think if Malik, Pickett, and Ritter are all gone, the Steelers won't draft a quarterback this year. It's those three or bust. That's the only interest that I believe they have in this class.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm completely fine with that.
Yeah.
I'm completely fine with that. Like, if they go in they go in a completely different direction, let's say the Falcons and the Panthers and the Saints all take a quarterback, I'm not reaching for Sam Howell or Matt Corral in the first round. Are they going to trade
It's a
back?
lot of it.
Are they going to trade back into the first round for Sam Howell?
No, they better not.
No,
They
I
better
don't.
not.
I do not like the idea of that whatsoever, and it's just I don't know. Maybe it's just back to my old curmudgeon type ways of thinking to myself, quarterbacks can be busts, and how much risk are you putting in on something like this? So
It can be. I'll say this: you're drafting the potential of Malik Willis. You're not drafting the product right now. I mean, you are physically, but yeah, you're not wrong to have your reservations and your fears and your concerns. If they draft Malik Willis, they're drafting what they believe he can be, not what he is right now. And that does sound like something the Steelers value when you think of the Artie Burns didn't work, Bud Dupree did work, Terrell Edmonds, jury's out, but looks like it's working. The Steelers, the quarterback is always different and special, but this is totally in their MO to be like, yeah, in about a year, maybe two, this kid's going to be taking over the league. So I think all the more reason for them to have Malik top of their board. And I just thought of that right now. That just came to me right now. That's how you know the draft is close.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that whatsoever. You talk about, oh, well, he was at Liberty, and there's plenty of other small college players that end up panning out. I know quarterback's a different breed,
Oh, Big Ben.
but you've got, that's been our thing the whole time, the MAC. And Kevin Colbert, everybody was ignoring the MAC, and Kevin Colbert's always finding players in the MAC or AAC or something of that nature, something that's outside of that the Power Five. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that happens, and I always think about Steve Air McNair, and that's going back like quite a ways. But you have quite a few players like Trey Lance and Carson Wentz, and there's a few others that have come from smaller programs to varied success. But you have guys
Tony
that,
Romo.
but Tony Romo completely undrafted altogether. It's like, how does somebody miss on that? Maybe one of the greatest undrafted players of all time, even though he didn't get the win, the big one. The numbers that Tony Romo put up are just ungodly when you're talking about, wait a minute, what round did this guy come out of? Like, I mean, everybody's going to say Tom Brady too, so you don't ever know, but Big Ten and Michigan. But you look at like Sam Darnold, and he comes out of like USC. Or we've talked about like some of the Alabama or Ohio State quarterbacks over the years that have just not made it on the biggest stage of them all. And you just can't say for the sake of saying, well, this guy went to Liberty, so he's going to suck. I mean, Liberty is what they were this year because of Malik Willis. You could tell he's got the leadership qualities. And did you see, like, there was also like the Wonderlic scores, and I know people toss those out, and it's like, well, if it sucks, you just ignore it. And if it's great, you're gonna brag it up. Well, he had a great Wonderlic score.
Yeah, he
Malik
was like
Willis did.
top 5, wasn't he? Top 4, top 5.
Absolutely ridiculous Wonderlic score. So just kind of going back here, let's see. Bring this back up on the screen. Who did I have? Was this Krabs? I'm gonna have to go back and check here now. Kyle Krabs, yeah, this was just the day or two before.
The Draft Network creator and owner.
Yes, and he has a full 3-round mock. I'm kind of interested in seeing what he gave the Steelers after. I just thought it was Devontae Wyatt going pretty high. Zion Johnson to the Ravens. That's kind of I could totally see the Ravens doing something with a first round pick that's an offensive lineman. He has your boy Lewis Seen going here to the Eagles. So
yeah, the draft community on Twitter is real high on Lewis Seen. I picked up on that. A lot of the draft dudes love Lewis Seen.
Yeah, so you get down to the Steelers. Chris Olave's gone. Garrett Wilson, they're packaged together. Actually, 3 wide receivers in a row. Jahan Dotson before it comes to Malik Willis, and that could very well bode well for the Steelers. So if we take a look, I'm going to pull up round 2 here somewhere, somehow.
He has us getting him at 20, right? Krabs has us getting Malik at 20.
Yes, Malik.
Nice.
Malik is there at 20. So you can't, no arguments necessarily there, as we've been saying the entire show. We go into round 2. Desmond Ritter is going to be gone to the Lions. That's a hot spot there, where everyone's thinking that the Lions are going to take quarterback top of the 2nd round, which is possible. Look at this, Mechie into the top of the 2nd. And that's where a lot of people, now we're getting running backs, a couple of running backs maybe off the board. Steelers, Kyle Gordon, corner out of Washington. That's an interesting pick with George Pickens on the board to the Packers right after that. Yeah. Calvin Austin was still there. Matt Corral was still there. So they pass on a couple. Let's see, go down into...
Austin is a name that I kept trying to get in the 3rd round of my mocks, and he wouldn't fall far enough. But Austin's an intriguing product.
Yeah, and I've had Khalil Shakir out of Boise State here in the 3rd round. Wow, Breece Hall all the way down 68 to the Texans. That would be a nice find. Sam Howell into the 3rd. And by all means, this doesn't mean this is the way it's going to fall. Darian Kennard, interior lineman, Kentucky. Ryan will like that. I'll just like it because it's a Kentucky guy. He probably doesn't know how, just knows who they are. So, Kobe Bryant ends up being there to the 49ers at 93. So some of these things still kind of line up with what we were discussing. It's, I don't know. I skipped through it quick enough that I'm not exactly sure where Sky Moore fell in there or some of the others. I just happened to see Pickens after the Steelers pick, and the Green Bay Packers absolutely have a need there. Necessity for some playmakers to put. Aaron Rodgers, for sitting out last year, what a hypocrite. I guess money does talk, because, and a lot of it, $50 million a year. Yeah. Okay. I don't really need Devontae Adams or Valdez Scantling or anybody. Let's just grab a guy or two cheap off the street and we'll ride
Sammy
this out.
Watkins is like their most established receiver, I'm pretty sure. Maybe I'm drawing a blank. Don't tell me Alan Lazard, dude. That's the biggest. Like, Alan Lazard is the James Washington of Packers faithful. They're like, dude, he's good. He just needs more opportunities. And he's not that good, dude. He's okay. And they have Sammy Watkins. Robert Tonyan might be a good fantasy football option for people this year, because like he's going to be getting lots of targets from Rodgers, I'm sure.
Yeah, you know what? Walter Football was pretty interesting. And I don't know if you saw this. I hate their website with a passion, but take a look at this one. Kyle Hamilton at 20. Yes.
Hey, I'm happy. I'm happy if they do that.
I'm doing dance. If he's there, and I said, they 2 minutes to TV time and everything like that. We were talking about spoilers and not going on Twitter because, with the TV delays, a lot of times what the picks, Twitter knows it like 5 minutes in advance.
It's been that way for like 6 or 7 years. Yeah.
And we're like, for the suspense of it, like kind of like watching a movie, Spider-Man No Way Home or the Batman or something. You don't want to know what happened.
Yeah.
And I'm that way. I hate watching trailers. I hate seeing it spoiled. I'll put my phone on mute because people are going to start texting me, especially like
Me too. When it was newer, I used to cheat and peek. And now that like the past 4 years, I haven't looked. I think the last time I looked was Edmonds.
Yeah, that I don't know. You get that itch. And if Kyle Hamilton's still there after 19th and, they have the Saints taking a tackle here, I'm going to turn my phone back on and I'm going I'm gonna go right over and see. I'm like, I gotta know like right away
Oh
because
yeah.
you know what's gonna happen. I'm not gonna pay attention to it, and it's gonna be my phone is gonna be buzz buzz buzz. It's I may even have phone calls coming through direct to talk about this, and then we're gonna be jumping on here with all of our Hollywood squares and hopefully talking about this that night. Hopefully you're not too inebriated, but
I
um
won't be. I'll be okay. Don't worry.
yeah. So how we feeling position wise if if the Steelers are taking quarterback? Like, I don't know. I'm not as big on corner. Defensive line, they took Loudermilk last year. So if you have Tuitt coming back, you still have Wormley as a starter. So if you have a Lulu and he's still healthy enough and fresh, like I think they could get by with that platoon even minus Tuitt. Obviously, Tuitt makes them better in every sense. But like I said, the secondary's back. You swapped out Schobert with Miles Jack. Your linebackers are intact. We saw Devin Bush out there running cones and stuff and looking like, he might be. Somebody made a good point. They said rehab isn't the same as training. And he did a lot of rehab last year. So could be physical. Hopefully it's not. I didn't see any mental aspects of his game before, but you never know when you got that type of injury. And I've been there. I tore an MCL back in high school. You're thinking about it. Maybe too much, especially
Same, dude.
coming right
Same.
back.
Same.
Yeah.
It's absolutely mental. Absolutely. I busted my knee up in high school too, and it takes. I was saying that about halfway through the season. I think Bush is suffering from that. We're also spoiled NFL fans because we've seen guys come back from knee injuries in like less than a year span and win NFL MVP. But it's more common than not that when you tear something of that magnitude, there's a year of getting yourself back, getting yourself comfortable, getting yourself acclimated, and then there's a year where you really hit your stride again. And clearly, I'm biased and hopeful because Bush plays on the Steelers, but I really, really think we're going to see a much better Devin Bush this year, especially with Miles Jack in town.
Yeah, and I was looking. They actually did this. I think did they do a full 7-rounder? This is just kind of interesting to see where they might be hitting on. Pick 52 is Sam Howell. When we take a look at Walter Football, and then going back, let's see, pick 84, Abraham Lucas, offensive tackle out of Washington State. I'm cool with that. It's like they could use some depth there, and I think they're going to find it mid to late rounds. You take a look, everybody thinks that everyone has to be a first-round pick to play offensive line. The Steelers were rolling with 2 undrafted guys, with Ramon Foster and Alejandro Villanueva during the high tide of when they had one of the top-ranked offensive lines. Of course, you had 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick in there as well, but those things are going to come over time. It's going to be a work in progress. I'm sold now, man. I am sold. I'm on board. I'm on the train. You're laughing, but the Terrell Edmonds move is what nudged it the full way. What else can it possibly be? If they go wide receiver, then they have a whole lot of faith in Mitchell Trubisky and Mason Rudolph. And you can't tell me that they're going to put all their eggs in that basket. If they're planning on it and they want to redshirt a player and Malik is there and they've done their homework, it's going to be Malik Willis. I don't see any other way around it.
Hell yeah, dude. I'm glad to have you. Welcome aboard. Choo-choo. And it's important. I keep saying this because I want people to know this. Yes, Malik is who I want. He's my target. But there's still a possibility they don't get him. There's definitely a possibility they don't get him, and they have to go elsewhere. If it's best player available, I'm still going to be psyched because it means he's a good player. In the mock drafts that I ran, those simulators where we didn't get Malik Willis because he went too high, there were guys like Jordan Davis, Chris Olave, Andrew Booth Jr., talent, first round, starter quality, possible rookie of the year talent was there at 20 for me to take. So, yeah, I'm glad you're on board. I agree. I think he's the pick. I hope he's the pick. And it's great to have you. But I do think there's a possibility he's still not. But yes, it's obvious that that's who they want. That is the answer to the question of the show.
Yeah, you're probably not able to keep up on your Twitter, but I was just checking for any kind of late breaking news, and someone really liked your Nick Cross pick over there in the second round. They were like, "Ooh, Nick Cross, round 2."
Oh, well, that was I didn't write that up. It's in the article because I took 3 screenshots of the ones where I got Malik, and Cross is in the one where that could be a reasonable pick, and I think that's the one that I took a tackle in the 3rd round too. So that wouldn't be as flashy of my choice with Watson and Kobe Bryant, but that would be one that I'd be open to where they go defensive back and tackle because there's more substance with those picks. But the flash got the best of me with my mock draft selection, and I went with the one where we got a receiver and a quarterback in Malik.
Yeah, and I'm totally on board. I think quarterback and wide receiver in the top 3 picks, as I think that's where they're going. And somebody had asked before, no running back. Like, were they going to add like another mid to late round back to this mix? I think they just pick up some like a Kalen Ballage type or Stephen Ridley type of veteran that's still just sitting out there post draft, unless there's somebody that really, they definitely have running backs on their board. They have every position on their board. They probably still have
maybe
punter on their
sixth
board.
round. I could see maybe 6th round, but not earlier than that. No, because at that point, yeah, you're drafting a guy who's not going to play much. Say what you want about wanting to get a rotational piece in here at running back or a change of pace back. That's a popular term. But Tomlin and the Steelers, they're really, really workhorse oriented whenever they have one. And that's Najee Harris. I'm open to a receiving back coming in and helping the cause and taking some of the load off of Najee, but that's not really Tomlin's MO.
No, and I still haven't given up hope on Benny Snell being able to do that also. He's been in the same crap situation as all the other running backs that we're talking about. He doesn't create like Najee Harris, but then again, Najee Harris, we're talking up here, draft pedigree, Alabama, this, that, and that. We're talking Benny Snell. He had to cut his teeth in Kentucky in order to make the NFL draft. I mean, that's not the usual path to the draft, is going through Kentucky as a starting running back. Again, basketball schools. By the way, I got one more here for you. This is Peter King, Peter King's Football Morning in America, Sunday night, courtesy of NFL or NBC Sunday Night Football and their Twitter account. They have Kenny Pickett going to the Pittsburgh Steelers with no trade. Didn't have to have any trade there, so he just falls there, and we'll end up seeing if the guy that's internally in the building. We haven't talked about him enough, but too many people, they're really fixated on the old Dan Marino type thing. You know what I mean? They're like,
understandably so. That was before my time as a fan, but yeah, if you miss on a guy like that in your backyard, I get it. It's not always that black and white. I'm a victim of this myself. You use a popular name kind of as like a yard mark, or a measuring mark for what a guy can be. I just did it recently talking about Lewis Cine. How he reminds me of Bob Sanders a bit because he's a popular former great player. Just because Pickett went to Pitt doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be Dan Marino, but I understand people that continue to bring that up, like as if we forgot or something. But getting Pickett at 20, I'm chilling. Like I said, I'm on board with Pickett, so that'd be a fine pick by me. No trade means they can still get what they need in the 2nd and 3rd and 4th.
I'm gonna toss a softball up here too. And I've been talking about whether the other two guys, Mitchell Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, what if one of these guys displays any type of talent, wins some games, looks good, and you've already drafted him. You're in the San Francisco 49ers territory right now with Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance. And what do? Well, they're not able to really trade Garoppolo, but a lot of that has to deal with contract. They have Mitch on just the 2-year. Yeah, Mitch is only on the 2-year, and Mason's only got 1 left. So it'll be interesting to see what would end up happening there if one of those guys ends up leaving, or you have Willis there as trade bait. He maybe never sees the field. The other guy scores the contract and off to the races. And then you got some other collateral there. So that's another thing you got to remember. Jimmy G, 94 pass attempts behind Tom Brady in relief before he's traded and gets like $135 million contract with the Niners about 5 years ago. So anything's possible there. You get this short little window. Remember Matt Flynn? I do remember Matt Flynn. He's the Russell Wilson. He's connected to Russell Wilson forever, dude. You tossed a softball up and you hit it yourself. You hit it out of the park because you beat me to it. The situations it's easy to point at him and pretend they're linear, but Trubisky's not making anywhere near what Garoppolo is. And I'm all for Mitch. I'm proud. I'm glad Mitch is here. He seems like a great guy, good fit.
But fact of the matter is, if he gets us to an average record next year, or even a decent one, a good one, and Malik's ready to go, the Steelers will try to trade him. Which, if we have a good year, maybe there's a market, or they'll be like, dude, get real. Like we drafted this kid first round, and you're gonna have to move on to greener pastures. Garoppolo's so hard to move because of his paycheck and because of his injury history. Mitch Trubisky wouldn't give the Steelers any problem. Worst case scenario, sorry, Mitch, but they would cut him. And like you said, worst case scenario is not even a bad one, because you go to, like, I don't know, Green Bay with Jordan Love. If they get stuck with Malik Willis on the roster and he can't play, hopefully it means it's because Mitch is out here competing for MVPs, or Mason, to your credit.
Man, yeah, Jordan Love. I'm sorry, I'm not on that train whatsoever.
No, he's not a good example for Malik. I'm saying that's a bad scenario.
Yeah, that's a bad. But then again, okay, you burned a draft pick. That was a second rounder. You burned a draft pick for it, but it didn't hurt you in the long term. And now you just move on from that. And that's what we're all hoping is that if they end up throwing a dart at one of these quarterbacks, this guy might not see the field. They might still stick with Trubisky, even if you're a 500 club. You know what I mean? And you're hoping the Steelers are more than that, specifically with all the talent that they have all over the field. And I've got one more hot take for the 2%ers. We love you, but I'm not going to say who this came from, but something floating around on Twitter, the Steelers Twitter. And it was about this Thursday, first round. If the Steelers are really locked into quarterback with that 20th overall pick, and Willis is gone, who is the next on the board? And that's what we're starting to talk. And they threw in Pickett, Howell, Ritter, and Corral. And somebody had said, would not be surprised if it's Howell in this scenario. And they're like, yeah, I totally agree. And I'm like, I don't think so at all, man. I think the love affair, everybody's so locked into Kevin Colbert went and watched a college football game at UNC, and that makes Sam Howell the guy. No, it doesn't. I mean, Mike Tomlin is down there yucking it up with, I just had former Ohio State guy that's coaching at Cincinnati now, Fickle. And it's just like, Did you notice this? It's like there is gushing going on here over Ritter. There was gushing going on with Willis. I'm sure there's plenty of gushing. You got Pickett. You're giving him a fist bump in the hallway, sharing the same practice facilities. He's just got to park on the other side of the lot. We saw it happen with James Conner. And if it happens with Pickett again, they're going to be selling a ton of these babies. And he's never going to see the field in year one unless there's an injury or some, other unforeseen circumstance, meaning the other quarterbacks stink. But I do think the Steelers are still competitive. Everybody is just so worried about the AFC North. They're worried about, all the other quarterbacks. So we're going to cover a whole lot of that territory post-draft. You got to see what the other teams are doing. The Ravens had a bad year with a lot of injuries. I mean, the Bengals were just in the Super Bowl. The Browns are whatever the Browns are doing. I don't know. They were the paper champions the last two off seasons, and that just translated into guaranteeing a guy like a $500 million or something, so $250 million. So I don't know, man.
That won't backfire, not at all. No way. They'll be fine.
Yeah, he's not going to miss any time whatsoever. So, anyways, Zach, we're here. We made it. We're arriving. It's the Oregon. You play the Oregon Trail. You're probably younger. You didn't have like the old 5.5 floppy disks with the Oregon Trail on it.
That's where you're wrong. That is where you are wrong, my friend. Yeah. So my school grades would correlate with the year, so that's how I can keep the people following me on this. So in second, third, fourth grade, it was 2002, 2003, 2004. During that time, they would send our class like to the library for library class, and there were times where we would just sit at the computers and they would make us play Oregon Trail for like the hour. So I remember fondly making the decision to go with the wood wagon or swim across the river, and then you're bit by a snake. I remember all that, bro. I'm almost 30 over here.
Almost 30. Well, I got to tell you this. We are finally here. We have finally made it. It is the end of the long journey. And hopefully when we get to Thursday night, we're all happy campers. But there's the Oregon Trail for you. That's color, man. We didn't have color. We had the monochrome Apple II. We had one Apple II that had the color screen, so we would have seen that full thing. But we have arrived. I might save this for later. Brian might not know what this is. They still were using the abacus when he was in school. So
Yeah.
but Zach, my dude, we're here. Edmonds is back on board. It looks like it's a Willis. Yes, it looks like it might be a Willis draft. I'm not gonna say anybody convinced me. I wasn't totally outside of quarterback.
No, you're a free thinker. You're a human being. Absolutely. I'm not doing any kind of mind tricks here.
I'm just not with the NFL media or even the people who want to stretch and reach for one of these quarterbacks, pay too much for them. They avoided Jimmy Garoppolo. They avoided all of this nonsense like a Marcus Mariota or anybody like that. By the way, I just pulled this up too. It was the last thing I was going to bring up. And I was looking at the cap hits on Over the Cap. And we've got Mason Rudolph at about a little over $4 million, $4,040,000. And Mitchell Trubisky's base is 3.6. Isn't that interesting?
I didn't even realize.
Yeah, because when you were talking about whether or not they could cut, their cap savings on Mitchell Trubisky next year would be $8 million. They would only take a 2.6 hit versus the 5.2 this year. They won't cut them this year because they'd be in the negative there. But this is where it's at. He had only 5.25 of that full 14.3 guaranteed. So
that's a great point, dude. That's a great, look out for that next year.
Equals. I can't wait for training camp. I might have to book back in Latrobe too. That was enough. So I'm not sure if we missed that, but I might have to book like a room for a month and just stay out there because it is going to be wild. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. So thanks for joining me. As always, folks, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We appreciate you. We've got more maybe even coming before Thursday. We're going to see if we can gather the herd here just like that and get to the end. You got to ford the river and get
through
across
the Oregon Trail.
Yes, absolutely. It's the Las Vegas Trail maybe. And we'll find out. I'm not sure if Ryan actually ended up surviving Vegas from his bachelor's party, but if he did, we'll see if he's available. If not, well, happy trails. I mean, it sucks because we have our draft experts, and you've got not this Zach, but the other Zach that is coaching and doing all kind of stuff here in the spring, and hopefully we can get a couple of our guys that do these big board type stuff. And I admit I'm not the biggest draft guy, but I don't get into the draft. Like I said, I got to see combine. I got to see what teams do in free agency because that gives me a better idea of where they might go. And with the Steelers just doing this deal with Terrell Edmonds, I'm back on the quarterback. I'm on the quarterback bandwagon. I wasn't there before entirely. I was feeling a little skittish, but I'm not feeling offensive line. Defensive line, depends who's there. So, but they're in a position to take the player they feel has the best value. And you got to admit, it is a very sexy pick to take Malik Willis at 20 or even at like 16 or 15 or something. You know what I mean? Just to jump up a few picks. There's nothing better than
he's
that.
The headliner, dude. Absolutely. That's what I mentioned in the mock draft. Yeah, it would be very sexy. I like the way you put that. That's something that it's similar but different to any time the Steelers rarely like get a big superstar in here. It's really cool to see. And for instance, you'll see TJ Watt like on the commercials now when they're trying to preview the season, and the Steelers just usually their draft, they don't get a chance to get a guy like that. Last year with Najee Harris, we got a taste of that because he was the best running back by far, and they used him on the promos, and they talked about that a lot after the pick. But the Willis pick you would have people saying the Steelers won the draft. They did what they were supposed to do.
Yeah, and it wouldn't entirely surprise me. The Steelers let's say they go and they take Pickett or Willis, they fall to them right there, and they don't play this upcoming season, but Mitch and Mason are just awful. Don't rule out, if they're picking top 10 next year, a quarterback as well. They might go after it again, swing for the fences. And that's what we've been talking about the entire time. It's like, we don't always feel that the Steelers are a team. They still make the playoffs. They still got in there, even with some ugly football last year. You can't discount the talent that they have. I mean, the AFC North is loaded, but if they're absolutely trash, are you going to wait? Are you going to do the what ifs? I don't think so. I think there's a handful of names if they're there, obviously. Now, I'll give you one more example here before we sign off. Kyle Hamilton and Malik Willis are there at 20.
Oh, that's so hard. Shoot, I gotta stay true to myself.
I'm back off. I'm on Hamilton because you got Edmonds on the 1-year deal. You can still cut Trubisky. You don't know who's in free agency next year. You still got that other class. I'm back off. I'm back off then. But I mean,
you're right.
If it's like Jordan Davis or Malik Willis, like I think it's pretty easy for me to say, okay, probably Malik Willis there. Yeah. Because I was saying like Davis is probably someone who's not seeing the field a whole lot, but we'll put a bow on this show. Maybe we got some more coming. We'll get this to you folks. There is a presser coming up. We knew that. Trust me, there probably isn't anything that Mike Tomlin and Kevin Colbert were going to say that we didn't already know. Somebody's going to ask a dumb question and say, hey, is quarterback, are you looking to draft a quarterback in this year's draft? And what are they going to say? Oh, well, we can neither confirm. Yeah, well, all the options are, we could neither confirm nor deny that information, but we're doing our homework. It's like, that's exactly what it will be. So till next time, folks, my name's Joe. That way, his name is Zach the Flash. And we encourage all of our listeners and viewers out there, as we do each and every time, to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.